It's a medical marijuana. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio. This week, we'll be talking to Regina Nelson. She's a PhD, and she has many books out on the endocannabinoid system, and she's with the ECS Therapy Center, and they have a program called Clinician to teach people about the endocannabinoid system and get into the cannabis industry. It's a great educational program. We'll be with her in just a moment. Don't forget, every Friday night and Saturday night, 9 p.m. on the West Coast, midnight East Coast, it's Late Night with Marijuana. That's my show on Clubhouse, so please join us. So right now, here is Dr. Regina Nelson.
This is the Medical Marijuana Radio Show with Larry Love.
And I want to welcome today Regina Nelson. Regina is with ECS Therapy and the Clinician Certification Program. Dr. Regina is in Oklahoma right now. Welcome to Medical Marijuana Radio for about the fifth or sixth time over the last 13 years. So good to have you back.
Well, we've known each other almost a decade, Larry.
Yeah. I believe it's over a decade. So tell me about ECS Therapy and the Clinician Certification Program. I mean, everybody's going into the cannabis industry right now, and they need education. There's a lack of education. So tell me what you're doing to help people help people.
Well, there you go. Well, the Clinician certification was originally built for CME accreditation for doctors. It's all accredited through the American Academy of Family Physicians, except for one unit, which is on veterinary care. So it's accredited through the American Veterinary Association. But I've been offering it out since 2015. There are 3 levels, kind of help people build as caregivers. And I really think, the first level is kind of like public education. It's about doctor-patient communication, the endocannabinoid system. What are the differences between hemp as we know it and cannabis?
Mm-hmm.
And it's all the same plant, but we talk about that. And then some targeted dosing. And then levels 2 and 3 build on that. Level 2 particularly looks at pediatric and veterinary cannabis use and helps you learn to build a therapy plan. And the third session's on cancer, multiple chronic illnesses, opiate withdrawal, which is a major issue in our society, and then seniors, because they're the biggest growing population of cannabis patients. And so I find from people that it's really helping them as cannabis coaches. It's a step up from being a bud tender, because it really helps you have some really targeted information so that you can help people that are new to cannabis therapy, those that don't want to smoke sometimes they don't want to get high. And so there's a lot of things that we can do. The more that we know about cannabinoids and the endocannabinoid system, we can really help people have a really pleasant experience no matter what their condition is.
So you've been studying this plant for a long time, especially as medicine. Any recent surprises? I mean, there's been plenty of surprises, along the road here, but are you still getting surprised about what this plant can do?
I'm surprised about a lot of different things, that the plant can do for sure. It's always amazing to me what it can do. And I guess around what the plant can do, I'm still really amazed by the terpenes and the discovery of the differences that we think of as sativa or indica effects and how those are really terpene driven effects. Dr. Ethan Russo's work has been just so important to this community and our understanding of the plant. And on the other hand, this year, he also put out research recently on cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, which many of us thought might be linked to things like neem oil or pesticides. And he's actually found it's linked to genetic defects.
Really?
There are people that have certain types of genetic defects that predispose them to cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. And it's a very, very small part of the population, but that's huge, huge knowledge, because we didn't know why a very small percentage of people had such an adverse reaction to cannabis.
Is it the THC? Do we know that if it's the THC, is it an overdose of THC?
Really, it's almost any THC can cause this in these people. And again, it's linked to them having genetic defects that don't allow them to absorb the cannabinoids appropriately into the cells or release them appropriately from the cells. And so now that we know that, they'll probably find out a lot more. But
Uh-huh.
again, this science is still in its infancy, so there's a whole lot to learn.
Well, I've had a friend, he's my friend for 15 years, 13, 14 years, and um, he gets it, this, cannabis
Mhm.
hyperemesis syndrome about every 18 months to 2 years. And
Mhm.
he just has to abstain for a few weeks, and then he's back on the horse. And it just, and he's about 74, 75 years old, been using cannabis for 50, 60 years. And this happens every once in a while. So, it's, I don't know, technically, I don't know what Dr. Russo and you have figured out, but it just always had seemed to be just a saturation of THC for some people. This is not a,
Again, I think it's that they can't release the THC from their cells appropriately. And at some point they have a buildup, maybe. I don't fully understand it. So this is kind of my layman's terms
Mhm,
to that. But Ethan Russo did a really excellent interview with Project CBD with Martin Lee.
mhm.
And so if you go to projectcbd.com, you can look for that. I think it was just a few weeks ago that he did that interview. It's really
Oh, excellent.
excellent
I'll check it
information.
out. We did interview Martin Lee at the beginning of this season, number one of this year, our 12th year. So it's a great. Do you need a
Oh,
minute
he's
to
a
get?
wonder of science
Yeah.
knowledge. I
Do,
have great respect for Martin Lee.
do you need a minute to get your camera settled?
Yeah, I think I got it fixed. Sorry about that. It
No, that's
slipped.
okay. So tell me about your clinician program.
Well, we offer the condition program. I prior to COVID was out offering quite a bit of live condition sessions, and I've also built a trainers network of people that have come through a train the trainer session with me and licensed my curriculum. So I have trainers in about 22 U.S. states and 5 other countries. I was on the phone with someone in Ireland when
Mm.
I ran over to your call because of a time difference miscommunication. But I have people that are out, again, utilizing this program that I talked to you about earlier, because it's a kind of an out of the box training program. I came from a background of human resources. And so when I built this program, I built it much the same way so that other people could be out educating with it as well. To date, we've trained about 12,000 people.
Oh, wow.
We trained around 8,000 live up until up until COVID. And then we just put it out online. It was fortuitous timing for us because, like you said, there are a lot of people that are now rethinking how they want to live their lives and what career paths they want. And people took that time to come in and educate themselves and move from sometimes server positions, working directly with the public to working in a cannabis space. And having the condition certification as a background, we now get employers who call and verify that, people have received their certification. Those who do seem to find the positions that they want within the industry. It's a really solid program. I have some trainers that focus just in on group training and go into cultivation centers or processing centers or dispensaries and train by large group. We're still doing things live online as well. And then we have the classes on Teachable all the time at ECS Therapy Center.teachable.com. You can go in and take a look. You can take them separately. You can get the whole bundled package. You can even get my books along with it and get them sent to you. But I think we've now trained people in every US state and something like 28 other countries have
Oh,
come
wow.
in and received
Well,
condition certification. So it's a really growing program.
so, I always keep talking about not only do we need to educate the people that are working, in the dispensaries and so forth, because that's the first line. Bud tenders are the first line of communication
They are.
between, and many people are new, to cannabis, so they need someone that's well educated. But we also have to educate uh, physicians and nurses
Yes.
and law enforcement and the people that make the laws. So as
Yes.
far as you know what I mean? I mean, they're making laws and they haven't a clue about the plant. So do you ever have any lawmakers or anything taking any of your classes that have sought you out to learn about what cannabis really is?
I have. There's a gal running for governor here in Oklahoma. Her name is Connie Johnson. She's a former Oklahoma senator who started introducing medical marijuana legislation here back in 2007, I believe.
Hmm.
And Connie's come through my classes and connected a number of people from across the country to me to come through the classes as well. We were set to go and do a large training for a large body of national legislature members when COVID hit. So that hasn't been rescheduled yet.
Right.
But I do think that there's a huge need. I often go out and talk to law groups. Because I get these classes CME accredited for physicians, it's made it really easy for anyone else in the medical profession to come through and get continuing education credits. But I didn't realize how easy it would be for people in the law industry to get continuing legal credits for taking it as well. And it's really important, I think. I just did a group, an online training for some defense attorneys. And, we still have all these interesting laws around DUI and this 5 nanogram rule,
Right.
around cannabis particularly. And which this law makes me a walking DUI at any given time.
Me as well.
And
yeah.
So I, really, I guess legally I shouldn't drive except for I'm not impaired.
See, that's the key.
I'm impaired.
The key is
impairment is the key.
Right.
Yeah. So I've been in talking to these groups and I was talking to the defense attorneys because really I can bring you 7 or 8 scientists that can easily say that this rule is crap, and it doesn't have any application to particularly say someone like me or someone like you and how we utilize cannabis. And so those kind of things are going to have to be changed. We've implemented a ton of laws and regulations across this country that are state specific in each case, that are a mess in each case, that future generations are going to be unraveling for a long period of time. So, because we're putting these tight restrictions on a non-toxic plant.
So, I like to tell this story every once in a while. I was, going to my doctor and getting a regular, cholesterol and all the regular panels and so forth. So I asked him, this is maybe 5-6 years ago or so. I asked them to take a THC test. I wanted to know how much THC I had in my body. Okay, so. First of all, I'm in New Mexico, where I originally met you, by the way, and I wish you were still here. But you progressed on to Colorado and now Oklahoma, and you're doing great things. So my story goes like this: I had the order to go to the testing place and to test for everything, including THC. So they actually had to. Well, the night before, I smoked a couple of joints. Took a 50 milligram capsule and stopped all consumption, by midnight. Okay. And then the next day at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, over 12 hours later, I went and I drove to Tricor, no problem driving. I had my test. They actually had to send the THC test out to another state. They were crossing the line with THC, weren't they? So they committed a crime and sent it out to Utah. Okay. And so with what I just told you about what I ingested 12 hours before, take a little guess about, what my test came back.
Oh, I'd say 8 or 9 nanos per liter.
Okay. Well, how about 499?
See, now
499. That's almost 5.
Yeah,
that's almost
like
10 times. 10 times what they consider.
When I had my THC level tested, it was also in New Mexico with Indian Health Services, though, there in Albuquerque. And it was so funny because when I asked for it, they were drawing blood because I'm anemic and, checking those kind of things too. And I asked her for this THC test, and I was just getting ready to head out on a road trip. I was working on my PhD at the time, and she kind of laughed. She goes, well, do you want to go home and smoke a little first so that you have a good rating? Because she asked me why I wanted it. And at the time, Colorado and Washington were both legalizing. And Washington was putting into their bill the 5 nanogram rule. And I was like, I don't think I can move to Washington. So maybe Colorado, I got to figure this out. And she goes, well, why don't you smoke a little first? And I was like, no, I want you to write in my chart that I asked for, and I didn't seem impaired when I asked.
Okay, that's
and
interesting.
She was like, okay. And she did that because I keep this should I ever get caught for a DUI when they smell cannabis? Because it came back 420 active nanograms
Wait a
per
minute.
liter. And I was like, and I laughed.
Somebody
And
was
I said,
playing a
"Oh,
joke on
that's
you.
the best thing. I got 420." And she didn't know about it. I had explained 420 to her. And then she goes, "Well, what's the rule that you were trying to get around?" And I go, "It's 5." And she goes, "Oh, well, you're under 500. I go, "No, it's 5, not 500. 1, 2,
Right.
3, 4, 5." And she was like, "Well, you were at 420. That's a lot. Like, that's way over." And I'm like, "Yeah." And she goes, and then she kept saying to herself, "But you weren't impaired." And I'm like, "No."
See, so the key is
And
what?
so the key is impairment. And so I've kept that medical record, and I've had mine checked a few other times along the way. And sometimes I've been like you, 499. I think I got once, and I got 517 once. They're pretty high. And I want that if I ever have to fight my way in court. I got arrested here in Oklahoma in 2018 for, well, it started as I may not have had my blinker on for a full 150 feet before an exit, but I did because I knew he was already on me because I was in a Colorado rental car.
Right.
And
So
it was before the medical marijuana rules had passed here. And so while it was all dismissed in the end, the case was fully dismissed. It cost me a fortune. But it was that thing. If they never questioned my impairment. Never once was my impairment at question. So they never charged me with DUI. What they did instead was charge me with intent to distribute.
and how much did you?
Instead of being a patient who just
Right.
safely traveled with their own medicine.
Right. Well, we've come a long way, since we met, you and I, 12 years ago or so, and it's moving fast. You look how many states we have now with legal adult use cannabis, and practically everybody's medical for right now. So I think what you're doing, as far as the clinician program is concerned, is so important. There are places in our country that have canna mills, so to speak. I mean, they're printing out certificates, but what do they really mean? What is the curriculum? What are they learning?
What's funny is how many of those people I get through my program, and they're like, now it all makes sense, So I've even had some people recently come through my Train the Trainer, where I allow them to license the curriculum that have come through a national cannabis coaching program. And while they loved it and learned a lot, it was my program that really helped them understand how to build therapy plans and really work with patients. Again, I come with this as a patient.
But now
I
you're
was sick. When you met me, I was so sick.
and now you're an educator because this medicine helped you get better, and so you want other people to benefit from it. So has your view on dosing at all changed over the years, on how you get maybe new people started? It's so important, that, this is a very healthy medicine. Okay. It really works for a lot of people, but not everybody reacts the same to the same kinds of dosages and for their particular afflictions and conditions and so forth. So how do you deal with, let's say, getting a new person to start using cannabis as a medicine?
Well, it's important that everybody have a base dose. You can smoke, you can vape, you can do all that you want on top of a base dose. And so I look at what's available to them, what market they're in, and sometimes that's the difficulty. I was just speaking with people in Ireland, and really I'm going to be looking for hemp oil here to send to them so they can get it through a trustworthy source. And I have a couple here. I'm sure you do as well. But it's this thing of starting people slowly and titrating them to a minimum therapeutic dose of 1 milligram per kilo of their weight. And for most people, I want to do that through really broad cannabinoids whenever possible, and not focus in on a singular cannabinoid, not just CBD, not just THC, but a broader perspective, at least a 1-to-1. But often I'm now combining hemp oils with cannabis oils, or getting people to do that so that they can function better without being maybe so high or lethargic or tired.
Okay, but so tell me, let me role play with you here, okay? I've never had cannabis before, okay? I want to get started on it. I hear it's very healthy. What should I do the first time? Help
I
me.
typically start people with tinctures or a suspension of some kind where they can start with just one drop under the tongue, and start that way. I think that's a really good base dose. Once people get comfortable, they can graduate onto edibles as a good base dose, or capsules or something, make
Okay.
their own capsules or something
I
along
don't
those lines.
I don't hear you talking about smoking.
Well, that's a choice. Smoking is great for acute relief, but it doesn't give you long-term relief. Let me tell you what happens when somebody comes to me, Larry, and they smoke all the time, and that's their primary way that they ingest. I don't tell them to change that at all. I'm like, continue to smoke and vape as much as you want. I need you to start and add more. I need you to start with a base dose. And I take that same base dose as somebody who's never used this before, and I titrate them up. And once they hit that 1 milligram per kilo of weight target, when I'm talking with them, they tell me, you know what? I don't smoke as much as I used to. I was smoking an ounce, ounce and a half a week. And now I bet I don't even smoke a quarter of an ounce. And it happened naturally because they weren't seeking the acute relief, because they started getting some long-term relief. And so it's about getting people to learn about the medicine through their experience. How do they feel? How long does it last? Because all these things differ from person to person to person.
Oh, that's the hardest part of all of this.
So
Okay.
I try to get people to journal. I have the Survivor's Guide to Medical Cannabis, but I also have medical cannabis journals that are available so that people can build a therapy plan, track it for a whole quarter of the year, week by week, and then they can take notes and they can write down the products that they buy and market and what worked for them, what didn't work for them, and they can track how they feel as they increase their dose and things like that.
All right. So, okay, we've both been educating you on a much higher level than me, but
I like that.
but we've both been doing this, for the last 15 years that I know you and so forth. So, trying to start somebody off, I think, with an edible could be very, very tricky, because if you have,
That's why I don't do it.
well, isn't
I
a
don't ever
isn't a
start people with
tincture
an edible.
isn't a tincture an edible?
It's more of a sublingual. Sublinguals, if you can put the drop under your tongue, they absorb within 10 to 15 minutes into your bloodstream, and you get the effect now versus later. An edible is chew it up, swallow it, wait to see how long it's going to take you to process and get the effect of that. Whereas a tincture is sublingual, again, under your tongue, 10 to 15 minutes. And you get a lot, it's more acute relief, kind of like smoking, but maybe a little longer. It's not as long as like an edible. But if you can get somebody comfortable with that, then you can eventually graduate them to an edible. I have people now that will get up in the morning, and when they eat their edible, they'll also use the tincture because they'll get the effect of that much quicker. But about the time it starts to wear off, the edible will kick in, and they'll be able to keep their pain under control, maybe while they're at work for the day.
But Dr. Regina, I don't want to take any alcohol in my tincture. So what can I do?
Well, if you can take a glycerin based
Yeah, but Dr. Regina, glycerin doesn't hold the THC and the cannabinoids that well.
You know what? I don't like glycerin because it upsets my stomach, and I don't like alcohol for just the same reason.
Yes,
so what I utilize is not a tincture, but a suspension, where somebody has taken an oil like olive oil or hemp seed oil or coconut oil, and they've diluted a full spectrum cannabis oil. And then they can use that in the same way. So a suspension is often called a tincture. I see them labeled that all the time in this, but they're really a suspension, and it has the same effect.
Well,
so it still can start with one drop under the tongue and nice and slow.
Okay, so what you just said was drop. Okay, for years I've been making my own ethanol extraction, where I freeze the ethanol, I freeze the bud, I put it and I make a martini out of it, and I shake it up and pour it through some coffee filters into a beaker, and then get rid of the alcohol by evaporating it off and then decarbing it and then putting into capsules. But what I do first, before I do that, is I will take, let's say, 10 grams of full extract cannabis oil that's been decarbed, and I will, into 10 grams, I personally mix in 30 milliliters of coconut oil. Okay, then I blend that together and I make drops. And then if how strong, what the percentage of THC is in those 10 grams. You can do some math and you know that each drop is 7 or 8 milligrams, and you can put it under your tongue. You can put it on any food and everything. But I think, starting someone off, in my opinion, at 7 or 8 milligrams of an edible, which I consider, it's an oral, ingestion, to be really high for a first-time user
I
of an edible.
agree. It can be way too much for a lot of people. 5
Yeah.
milligrams can send some people into an
Absolutely.
overdose feeling.
So
So I start with microdosing with, again,
yes.
1 to 2 milligrams. You just hit it. You figured out your dose and where to get it. And in the survivor's guide, I break that same thing down. People can do the math and they can break it down and figure out how much they need to add of coconut oil, or again, olive oil or hemp seed oil, or whatever type of other cooking oil that they want to utilize.
Find your dosage.
And bind your dosage.
Find it. Don't take, don't take that 1 milligram and then an hour later you don't feel anything and take 3 more. You got to start. You have to start on another day fresh, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, and I helped an elderly person with dementia get started with using cannabis by starting with 1 milligram and then seeing how they did, and then eventually worked them up to like 35 milligrams a day. It was, an Alzheimer's, a dementia patient, and it took the edge off. And they never said that they felt high. Now, they might have been just feeling good. They might have felt that they were feeling good. But if someone tries this wonderful medicine for the first time and they either get too high from smoking it or from eating it, they're never going to go back to it again, because it can be an uncomfortable situation. So, you know me from when I worked at a dispensary here, and managed it for a few years, 10, 12 years ago. And I used to counsel people there. I counseled a 94-year-old woman who had never had cannabis in her system. Okay. And it's very, very tough. So when I talk to new patients, I say, try 1 puff and put it down and wait 20 minutes and see how you feel.
Yeah, when you start to smoke, it's really interesting to me now. Again, a lot of people have come to this, they're like, well, can I do it and not smoke? Because they don't smoke it already. They don't understand the benefits of smoking it. Now, once they've been a patient for a little while, we can talk about the additional benefits of smoking or vaping or something along those lines. Because it's counterintuitive. But for people with COPD, it can be huge because it's a bronchial dilator.
Right.
And you can almost look at it like a nebulizer treatment versus, you can't compare it to like smoking cigarettes. And so that's where people are confused. And a lot of times people with COPD, they're not going to smoke in the beginning, but once they've been around it and they've tried it, they've gotten some relief, then they can then put it into the think about it more as a nebulizer versus a cigarette.
So I like to cite a study by Harvard from about 5 or 6, 7, 8 years ago, that of 5,000 men that concluded that smoking cannabis not only improves lung function but lung volume, and that there's no evidence of it causing any lung cancer. So, so that's what, that expansion in your lungs that you feel when you smoke certain really good cannabis, that expansion, and that's actually healthy. And so that's what when people say, look, if you're smoking something, it's got to be bad for you. Well, that not necessarily so when it comes to cannabis. I've been smoking for 53 years. I go to my doctor, once a year or twice a year, and they listens to my lungs, and he never says that he hears anything wrong. He says, you sound good. So, I mean, there's obviously a use for using it as smoke, smoking and ingesting it that way.
Again, you can't contrast cannabis to tobacco. And we're so, I get smoking tobacco is really bad, and we're all real clear on that. But this is, again, it works very differently within the body. And until people understand that, they don't really know that they're comparing apples to oranges.
Exactly. And of course, in Europe, they're known for mixing cannabis and tobacco together. So that's
they are, but they've changed that. Like in Amsterdam, when I was there 2 years ago, right before COVID, the coffee shops had banned tobacco, and now on their little tables they would have herbal blends that you could use to replace the tobacco.
I
There
took
you go.
I took
Things
these
like
off of one of the
chamomile.
dispensaries.
Yeah. And so I was talking to another group, another naturopath the other day, and who was on to that idea of providing other smokables to people from other natural plants that
Hmm.
are healthier, again, to try like as a smoking cessation program. And I think that that could be very valuable, but that's what they've done in Europe, because again, it really surprised me there that how many people, everybody puts a little tobacco in their joint. I'm like, but you don't smoke. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, some people say that they think they get a higher effect from it, from, I guess, mixing the
Well,
nicotine.
you're also lighting up your nicotine
Right.
receptors at that same time. So you're getting a little high from that on top of the cannabis high.
Yeah. So yeah, I did make my visit to Amsterdam in 2009 when I happened to be in Europe, for another reason, and I said I got to go. So anyway, I made my Mecca. I went there, and when you know what I said, California has way better dispensaries than what's going
Oh,
on here.
the flower in Amsterdam is
Yeah.
terrible. I
Although
smoked hash the entire time I was there because the flower was so pitiful.
yeah, but we
But the hash was great and it
oh
was
yeah,
cheap. So, and it's that thing, they don't really have, if you're a medical patient there, you go to the pharmacy and pick up your marijuana. And much
right.
like kind of a government type program, a little bit different. Um, yeah, I'm working with people in Europe now, and because they have socialized medicine, it's a lot different here. And the doctors really want to know about it before it comes out. They want to find out how it can be helpful to their patients.
So how are they learning in Europe about cannabis?
Well, we're teaching clinician classes is a part of it.
Okay.
Um, and so I went for a conference when I just mentioned I went to Amsterdam. I've gone to London for a conference, and I met someone who's she's on the board of the Royal Academy of Nurses, which sounds really awesome, but it's one of the 3 nursing boards in the United Kingdom that's also has breadth on into the European Union. And they immediately brought these classes in to start training, because nurses, again, are kind of frontline to patients, and trying to help people use it effectively is really important. At this point, they don't have a lot of products out. They're highly regulating them like pharmaceuticals. I know a few people trying to put some products into the market there, but really what they have is from GW Pharmaceuticals. They have Sativex and they have Epidiolex.
Have you ever tried either one of those products in any
Tried
way?
them. Hmm.
And are they effective?
Sativex is a 1-to-1. I don't like it because it's mixed with sesame oil, which burns my throat, and I don't
Oh,
think is good for a lot of patients.
wow.
Epidiolex is a CBD isolate. I've also tried Marinol, which is a THC synthetic, which is
Right.
awful. It was a really bad experience. But yeah, I know pharmaceutical reps in Europe. So when I was in Europe, I got to try a number of things, and
Hmm.
Marinol is what I would say was the worst. But the GW pharmaceutical people and I go round and round because they know that they're taking the pharmaceuticals directly from the plant. They're isolating the CBD directly from the plant. So that's good that it's not synthetic CBD. But they don't want to hear that when people just utilize the plant with all its chemicals, they have a better experience than just with that isolated chemical.
Well, people
One,
like us know that. We know for years.
and scientists are starting to document that in research too. Not GW pharmaceutical scientists, but other scientists have compared hemp oil to CBD isolate. And they're very clear that hemp oil is a much better choice because of those synergistic effects in the body.
So why would they use sesame oil instead of hemp oil? Or I mean, it's obvious that hemp oil would be a better carrier.
Well, you would think so, but I don't know the reasoning. I know sesame oil is used a lot in different
Mhm.
medical reasons.
Maybe it holds that. Maybe there's more fat in it, or
It's a
it's
little bit
more.
better,
Yeah.
as a little bit better carrier. But again, a lot of people have problems with sesame oil. I
Hmm.
do. I'm one of those people that I'm like, nah, it's not worth it to me if it's in sesame oil. I know that there were a few of the companies, again, making suspensions here in the United States that chose to use sesame oil because they were trying to follow the GW um, model, and they pretty much all changed to olive oil or coconut oil now. I'm really shocked that I don't see more in hemp seed oil for the exact same reasons as
Hmm.
you, Larry. So I'm looking to put out products in 2022, some suspensions here in Oklahoma that are suspended in hemp seed oil.
All right, so let's talk about Oklahoma for a second. I met you originally here in New Mexico. This is before Oklahoma had a program, and then you went from here right after that up to Colorado, and for a little while, and now you're in Oklahoma, which I believe isn't that your home state, by the way?
It is. I was born and raised here.
All right,
Yeah,
so
I came here because my parents are retired and, retired public school teachers.
oh wow, bless them. What a great thing to give of your life to be a public school teacher.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So Oklahoma sort of has a new reputation now in the cannabis industry. It's like the wild wild west. Okay,
We
I think they gave out licenses like Oprah gives away cars underneath every
Well,
seat.
there was no limit on the licenses. The law didn't allow them to limit the licenses. So if you could afford the $2,500 license fee, which they can also not change, then
Hmm.
you too can have a dispensary or a cultivation or processing, depending on what you want to do.
So what happened was watching it from next door here over in New Mexico is that there were just dispensaries everywhere, everything
Loaded.
and grows and so forth. So has the cream risen to the top yet? And what's the rate of people going out of business and what's happening right now today
There's
in 2020?
I wish I could give you a rate of going out of business. I don't think we have those statistics, and I've been asking for somebody to start keeping those, and I don't know how we do that, but it's needed here. There's a huge, huge churn in this industry. The other thing that's happened here that's been interesting, and in the beginning, you didn't have to be a resident of Oklahoma to get into the business here. They did pass a residency requirement a little over a year into the program. So now you
Hmm.
have to have 2 years of residency before you can get a license. So that said, what we saw here was a ton of mom and pops initially pop up, and then they were followed in by the national chain. The
The
national chains are trying to choke out all the mom and pops.
right, the MSOs.
Because this is not anything more than a microcosm of our greater society, and this is what business is about. We don't see
Hmm.
enough cottage industry in the United States. If you leave this country, you see a lot of cottage industry in all the other countries. In Europe, many people own their own small businesses. In Asia, many families have several businesses,
Hmm.
and you just don't see that here in the same way. And that's because they get gobbled up by these big investors. And we're seeing that go on here. They're trying to choke out the mom and pops. There's price wars going on, um, all sorts of craziness going on.
So
Um,
how
yeah.
much how much is the good cannabis compared to the, I mean,
It
are
varies.
is there good cannabis there? Because here in
Oh,
New
there
Mexico.
absolutely is. We grow cannabis. I have a family grow, and we grow all organic. We're really small. Our price is wholesale right now around $1,300-$1,400 a pound.
Hmm.
And we only have a few small customers that we service and we kind of have agreements with, so we'll stay okay.
So are you
Because some
calling
of these
that
big chains are
craft?
now dropping prices to like $750 a
Mhm.
pound, trying to choke out the mom and pop growers.
So are you growing craft cannabis, would you say? Something that's a little bit better than most of the stuff that's out there? Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. We
so
pushed in a, yeah.
how's the how are the prices? Give me an idea of what the prices are for bud, let's say.
A number of dispensaries keep their prices at $10 a gram or lower. You can definitely find $15 and $20 gram stuff, but I
Oof.
would say the biggest prices are between $6 and $10 a gram for really decent cannabis
Hmm.
and cannabis products.
What about edibles?
I don't know the pricing on edibles quite
Hmm.
as much. I don't buy edibles. I
No.
make all my own edibles.
Yes.
Capsules and stuff like that are high. It's why I'm thinking about going in. I was looking at suspensions and tinctures the other day, and that's why I'm thinking about going into that market with my own. Is they're too high
Please
and
do, because
they're
that's
low
the.
dose.
Let me just jump in for a second. You know, making capsules, that's the real medicine. Okay, sticking this great, full extract cannabis oil and into sugar and all kinds of fat and so forth. In order to get it into your system, is just
No.
really not healthy. Okay, so
I
my
agree. I tell people that they should put in whatever cooking oil they use to make all their regular food and
Mhm.
at a dose again that they can medicate comfortably.
Yeah, again, I
That's a
make
way better option for most people.
yeah.
But like you said, capsules, we've all become a take a pill kind of thing. And capsules are easier. They're easier for people to transport. They're easier for people to remember to take. And there's nothing wrong with putting these suspensions into a nice little vegan capsule that people could take that way. They just got to remember
Mhm.
they're going to be long to onset because they're going to work like an edible because
Right.
they're going to pass that, sublingual. And but it's good for the liver to have that processing
Mhm.
through the liver and cleaning out all our
Well,
livers. Most of us have
and
damage.
it's got to make the liver a little healthier because the cannabinoids are getting
Absolutely.
right in that liver and so forth. For years I just described to you a few minutes ago how I make my
Sure.
drops. I call them drops because I keep them in a tincture bottle and I do the calculation, so I know that one drop is 7.5 milligrams of
Uh-huh.
THC or the total cannabinoids and so forth. And if I want to take 10 drops, I can put it on any food. I can put it on my breakfast. I could put it on any of my food, just the drops. And I find that I think that's a product that is being
Hmm.
under manufactured. I mean, it's the same ingredients that are in the capsules,
Yep.
but now, it's just a little easier to use because you can use it at your will and you can travel with it and, and so forth.
Yep.
So, um, so,
I do the same thing, Larry. I do almost exactly the same thing. And I think that's just one of those things you try to look for the easiest way as a patient,
mhm.
to
My
transport
favorite,
it, to get it out,
yeah.
to use it, to have it available to you. And I think that's just an excellent way to do
Yeah.
it.
My favorite is Sunday mornings when I put, 10 drops on my lox bagel and cream cheese, which
Mm.
is sort of a Jewish thing that I have going here. And it's just so pleasurable to be able to dose anything.
Yeah.
We have, some time left still, and I really want to get back to, if you could, describing the clinician program, okay? Like how many different sections are there? How long does it take to go through it? Because right now, while we're talking, there's more states that are legalizing. There's more
Yeah.
people that want to come into this industry, and I find that we were just talking about Oklahoma a few minutes ago. I find, and even here in New Mexico, where we're going to mimic you guys because we have again $2,500 different levels of licenses, for growing, for dispensary, for consumption lounge, and so forth. So people need to get educated, and people that are coming into this industry are, number one, underfinanced because they think it's going to be so freaking easy, and undereducated. So you are helping
Yep.
educate people.
I
So
am. I can't help finance them. I'm struggling with that myself on the
okay.
end. No, we took on our family grow, too, without bringing in investors because of a trust standpoint and keeping it small for reasons, that kind of go along with that. Because we've seen so many investors come in and take over so many businesses and didn't want that to happen to one in my brother's backyard
Mhm.
in a sense, because he lives in the country. And so we're out kind of in a rural area with our grow. But it is really interesting, and education is really important. So the condition program has 3 different levels. Each level has 4 classes. So basically, you could finish the whole thing in 12 flat hours, except for you would be on overload and totally exhausted.
Mhm.
And so the level 1 classes are doctor-patient communication, talking about the endocannabinoid system. The third one discusses hemp and cannabis. What are those differences? Because a lot of people don't know these CBD markets have sprung up and they don't realize there's some stuff in that market that probably shouldn't be, like CBN, which is really a derivative of THC. But we see a lot of CBN in these CBD stores. Uh,
What's wrong with that, by the way? I mean, I have a, I have a
well, there's
bottle.
nothing wrong
I have
with
a
that.
bottle
It
of
just started
CBN
as,
right here, that
yeah,
is water soluble and so
CBN is
forth.
excellent.
Yeah.
But it is THC. It is, and THC is illegal to be in the hemp market. And so when you take something, if you have a product that started that is 48% let's say 48% CBD and 48% CBN, that started off as a 1-to-1 of THC to CBD. All they did was bring the temperature up and far enough that they decarboxylated it enough to turn that from
Yeah.
THC to CBN. So it's probably not legal on
Well,
that
well,
market.
I don't know. I would say I would disagree with you because
Some people do.
the legality of THC, that arbitrary 0.03%,
Yep.
as long as it's under that, then it's legal.
Yep. And I agree. And if it's just CBN, I'm seeing it's not a problem. Now we're starting to see Delta 8 THC and Delta 10 THC and something called THCO. So this is all
THCO
coming.
acetate, THCO acetate.
Yeah, acetate.
Okay.
So let's talk about these things because they're coming out of the hemp industry. What's happened is because hemp has been nationalized through the national, hemp bills, farm bills.
2018 Farm Bill. Yeah.
Yeah, the 2018 Farm Bill, we now see that we have a lot more medicinal hemp available to us. So that means pricing started to drop. And because people started to have it on hand if they kept their prices too high. So what these investors did, they've got good chemists on their, payrolls. They asked them what they could do with that CBD that they now can't sell except for at a lower price.
Right.
And so they've chemically altered the CBD into Delta 8 or Delta 10 or THCO. And these are just chemical soups. And if they're for sale at gas stations in Kansas because they don't meet the law, I'm going to tell you, those investors in that company, they don't give one crap about your health. THC, I say stay away from those products in total.
All right. Well, I totally understand what you're saying. Okay. But we do not have enough research done on Delta 8, on THCO acetate, Delta 10, and so forth. Okay. However, we need to do that research for sure. And we may
I agree. I think we need to see what it does because, again, we've chemically altered nature.
Right. We may well find.
I want us to have nature.
Right. No, I get you. I get you. We may well find, though, that there will be some kind of benefit from Delta 8. I think there'll be some health
benefits from it, no doubt.
The only benefit from it right now, if it is cleanly manufactured by a reputable manufacturer, and there are some out there, there are products out there that are clean Delta 8. Okay. And the only
what does
real.
That mean, Larry? Because they still had to add an emulsifier. They still had to add a chemical to that. I want to know what their version of clean means.
Well, manufactured with standards that doesn't leave any, I guess, residuals of the wash or whatever they're doing. Now, we don't know what that means because no one heard of Delta 8 10 months ago. Okay, I mean, some people did, but the point is there is lots of bad Delta 8 out there, but like you said, buying it at gas stations and so forth, that's not the place to do it.
I can go to Texas and buy it wholesale, and Texas is a lockdown, ugly state, so that's not good.
Yeah. So the future, we don't know what it's going to bring, but I agree that, you shouldn't really, I've tried Delta 8, by the way. Okay, I tried, water soluble Delta 8, and for me, it just made me like woozy and nauseous for about 15 minutes, and then there was really no pleasurable effect for me. Okay, I'm a THC guy, number one, and the thing that Delta 8 is fulfilling right now is states that are not legal for Delta 9. Okay, and so these people are using a micro kind of THC dose with Delta 8, which is not really, it's not Delta 9 at all. So it's a legal.
But they might as well use CBN. CBN is at least natural from a plant in a degraded way. And again, we just argued, could it be in a CBD store? Again, I never called them out on their products. I just said, are you aware this used to be a 1-to-1 of THC and it's not now? I mean, no wonder this works so well for people.
It's
no wonder.
What's so
well above the 0.03% in some way.
Which is an arbitrary number that they just picked out of a hat that means absolutely nothing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
and we should see hemp raise to 1% this year.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, I don't think there should be a cap on it at all. I think hemp, they show that if 5% THC is beautiful biodiesel. So why are we capping them for these industrial?
Because I'll tell you why.
You might get why. It's
exactly.
Prohibition mindset. It's outdated.
It's the lawmakers. I said this a million times over the last 13 years on this show. The lawmakers are not educated. The lawmakers sit around a table and they have 3 martini lunches and they don't want us to get high from THC. Okay, it's hypocritical. So we have a few minutes left. I certainly, is there anything else that you'd like to that you didn't get out? I also want you just to tell us a little bit where. Bless you.
Sorry,
That's
that joint got me.
Hey, if you don't cough, you don't get off. Okay, remember that. That's 1968 lingo right there. So anyway, tell us how people can go check out the clinician course. And
well, they can start everything right through the nonprofit at myecstherapy.org. You can find links to the clinician classes. We also are taking survey data from patients that are willing to give it to us anonymously on fibromyalgia, chronic pain, just how they use cannabis, sleep, other things like that. So they can participate in research there that in 2022 will go before a research team to be analyzed. And then they can link to the classes there, or they can go directly to Teachable, or go to ECS Therapy Center.teachable.com and find the clinician certification classes there.
Okay, and as far as your ECS therapy books, that you have a couple, I think, right? At least one.
Yeah, the books are available at myecstherapy.org as well. You can still get a special on that. They're cheaper than at Amazon, and it always helps to go through the small business versus the big corporate giant.
And do you sell them
I
on?
can get them to people in time for the holidays. So if people are interested in gifting books and things over the holidays, this is the perfect time to be ordering those at myecstherapy.org.
So ECS is the endocannabinoid system, just so people know what that means. And when did you first hear about the endocannabinoid system? How long ago?
I want to say 2009.
Okay.
And really thought it was maybe something by 2010, and then really realized pretty quickly it was phenomenal. And now I think it's our master regulatory system over pretty much what we think of as all of our brain's activities, regulating all our neurotransmitters, all the signaling that goes on in every single cell of our body, which is highly complex. Do
you have, before we go, we have just a couple of minutes left, but, CHS, cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, which we did talk about before a little bit. Is there any treatment for that you find best, that you've talked to people and collecting your data over the years?
No, I really find more often than not people have been misdiagnosed. Because as soon as they go to the ER and they're sick and they use cannabis, they have cannabis hyperemesis. But there are a true number of patients like your friend that do have it. And for those, I was just really thrilled about the work that Ethan Russo again has done to show that it's genetically related, because I think that's really important, because we just didn't know. And I think a lot of us assumed that it was tied to like neem oil or some of the pesticides and things that maybe people might be using, shouldn't be using, but that's not the case. So now that we know that, I think it is kind of the abstinence of THC, and maybe it's again seeking broader cannabinoid profiles for therapy for those people that.
Right. So the abstinence of THC is the fix for having those symptoms of CHS. Okay. I've always thought that it was a toxicity to THC that some people get. Dr. Regina Nelson, thank you so much for being on Medical Marijuana Radio for one of the umpteenth times. The last time we spoke was before. Oh, it's my pleasure. And people, please go out and check out her program. If you want to get into the cannabis industry, this is one of the best places, because Regina's been in this for a long time and she's in it for the right reasons. So Regina, Dr. Regina Nelson, I thank you again today. Peace and love, and we'll be right back after this.
This is the Medical Marijuana Radio Show with Larry Love.
Wow, what a great interview. I want to thank Dr. Regina Nelson. Thank you so much. Also want to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thanks for your inspiration. And once again, don't forget, every Friday and Saturday nights, 9 p.m. on the West Coast, midnight East Coast, it's Late Night with Larawana. That's me, on Clubhouse. Peace and love, everybody. Peace and love. We'll see you next time.